Hello and welcome to a DFS preview for the 2023 Genesis Invitational. My name is Eric, and here's SweetSpotDFS. It's all about trying to hit the optimal lineup every single week. And I do that in these preview videos by going over the stats I think you need to target when building your lineups. And that means taking a look at the bucket system, which if you're unfamiliar with, I do have a video or a video link in the description below that'll send you to the video that explains all about it. It is an 18-minute long video, but you only need to really watch the first 5 minutes to understand what it's about. And really, the too long didn't read version, you need to diversify your lineups in order to take down a GBP or in order to hit the optimal lineup like I'm trying to do every single week, which means kind of going outside the box, grabbing one or two golfers you normally wouldn't, because let's face it, you can't get the same type of golfers in a lineup under the salary cap that takes down a GBP. There's always one or two random guys that win it for one lucky person or any lucky person any single week. The bucket system captures that, and it lets you know which golfers from which buckets you want to select. Not so much which golfers, just how many golfers from a bucket you want to select. So that's what I'll be doing at the tail end of this video. Of course, in the beginning of the video, I'm going to be going over the tournament and golf course information. We'll look at past optimal lineups for this tournament, try to get some kind of salary concoction put together, if you want to call it that. Like, what type of salary combinations helps you win a GPP at this tournament or even take down the optimal lineup? So we'll go over that. We're going to review the Waste Management or the WM Phoenix Open. Keep forgetting it's WM Phoenix Open. We'll review that because I want to show you how well the sweet spot process did. Because when I get into the bucket system, I want you to have a little confidence to see how well it did. And it did pretty well at the WM Phoenix Open. So I'll also share that. And of course, the bucket system will be at the end of this video. So that is what I'll be covering in this preview. But before we get there, let's go over some giveaway reminders. We'll start with a giveaway reminder, and then we'll get into a giveaway. Just to remind everyone, I do a weekly and a monthly giveaway. All you need to do is be subscribed to this channel and comment on any of my videos. You get a free entry into not only the weekly giveaway, but the monthly giveaway you see on the screen just by putting down a comment in the comment section. You get one free entry per video. I usually put out about 7 or 8 videos a week. Last week I only had 4, which I apologize. I was busy, so I wasn't able to cut up my preview video, which is kind of a longer video, or even the strategy video. That would have given you more opportunities for more entries. We just had 4, so you only got a max of 4. But any video that I put out this week and you comment on, that'll get you a free entry into, again, both the weekly and the monthly giveaway. So again, be subscribed, comment down below, and at the end of the month, I'm going to run the monthly giveaway. If we can reach the goal that you see all the way over there to the left, 500 subscribers, I mean, we're inching there. We're super close. We have 485 out of 500. We just need 15 new subscribers, and I'm going to give away $50. If we don't hit that, that's fine. I'll give away a t-shirt, which I did. Well, we had a giveaway winner last week that's going to get a t-shirt with the logo that I have right here. Now, this is my sweatshirt, but I'm going to give away a t-shirt if we don't hit the subscriber goal for one of you guys that are participating on this channel. It's my way of rewarding you, so that's what I'm going to do. But of course, if we hit that 500 subscriber mark, boom, we're going to give away $50 to anyone participating within this month. So that's all available to you. I also have kind of like a rebate, as I call it a giveaway, but it's really a rebate. If you sign up on Prize Picks and you use the promo code SweetSpot and put at least $20 in your account, I'm going to give you your $20 back. So you get to play it for free, plus Prize Picks is going to match your deposit up to $100. So that $20 turns into $40, and it really just costs you that initial sign-up information as well as the initial deposit. But you'll get $20 from me right after you sign up and put that deposit in, and I get the report that says that you signed up using the promo code. There's a link in the description that'll get you to this sign-up page, and it'll already populate the Sweet Spot promo code in there for you. So you don't even have to do that. You just have to hit that link, sign up, put $20 in your account, and boom, you are going to get a $20 rebate from me, and you get to play for free. So again, link in the description. Now, I'm also going to provide a couple other things throughout the week. One being a cheat sheet. Let me go ahead and put it on the screen first. Everything that I'll be going over in the preview video, as well as the strategy video and all the little cut up segments, as long as I'm talking about the spreadsheet, will be available to you using the link in the description below. So you just hit that cheat sheet link. It'll send you to this page. All that I want you to do, go up to that file menu, scroll down, or, go on down to make a copy. That way it's yours, because I don't allow edit access on my copy of this of the spreadsheet, just in case there are any bad actors out there that want to go in here and vandalize it or mess up all the data. You making a copy makes it yours, and it also allows you to use the filters that are on the spreadsheet. So when I go over this in the strategy video tomorrow, as well as the preview video today, you get to follow along with me using the same filters. Also, the bucket system is in here for the Genesis Invitational. Again, this has filters as well. So when I go over the bucket system for the Genesis Invitational, you can follow along with me, and you know exactly what to look for, all that stuff. Again, there is a link in the description below that'll get you, it'll send you to this website. The other thing that I have available, let me go ahead and bring that up. I didn't have it ready, so my apologies. I have an optimizer that I use in my strategy videos exclusively. You can have access to this optimizer as well. Now, this is filled in with last week's information. This is how I figure out what the optimal lineup is, as well as the sweet spot optimal, which I'll be covering, a little bit later in this video. But if you watch any of the strategy videos, or if you join me during the strategy video, I'll be using this to build lineups. And it's a wonderful thing because you're going to see in the review for the WM Phoenix Open how well the bucket system did. If you follow the buckets, it limits how many golfers you can select from each bucket, and it gets you really close to the optimal lineup. I'll spoil it for you. I was 1.5 points away from having the optimal lineup if you follow the sweet spot optimal rules. So I'll again explain this when we get towards that part of the video. But again, this optimizer is available to you if you want to use it. Or join me in the strategy video that I'll put out tomorrow. I'm thinking about going a little earlier. Just check YouTube, because I'll put a reminder out there letting you know when I plan to go live. I'm thinking around like 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Trying to get out a little early because I have some things to do later that night. You guys can come in and join me, and we can build some lineups together. Again, I'll be using the optimizer, which is available to you. All you have to do is be subscribed to this channel, comment down below, and email me right there, SweetSpotDFS@gmail.com, and you will have access to the optimizer. That's all that I have for giveaway reminders. Let's go ahead and run a giveaway. Again, I only had 4 videos, so not a lot of videos for people to participate with. We ended up having 19 total entries, so appreciate all of those that did participate on last week's video. I'm gonna hit this Y, and we're gonna have a winner. And I need to get a damn drum roll. I gotta get that sound. Winner is Eric Sullivan. First time, I think, commenter. It's pretty lucky, man. Contact me right there again, SweetSpotDFS@gmail.com, or reach out to me at Twitter. Let me know how I can give you $5. I can do PayPal, Venmo, Google Pay. We'll figure something out. But message me, you just won $5. Put it into the Drive the Green contest, or use it however you want. Congratulations again, Eric Sullivan 79. Let's go ahead and get into this thing. We're going to start. Let me bring it up. I apologize. We're going to start with the tournament and golf course information. We are at the Riviera Country Club. This is the Genesis Invitational. It's a staple on tour. This golf course is a staple as well. Nothing really has changed over, there have been things that have changed, but small things. What you see on the screen is kind of my golf course analysis of shot shapes that are required. I shouldn't say required, which would be beneficial. Not, like some of these, I don't know. Up to you guys to read this. I'm not going to go over every single hole, Some of them I'll say, yeah, you actually do want to hit a shot shape. It would be much preferred here. This is kind of a tree line golf course. Like your Bubba Watsons of the world have won this tournament. People who like to shape shots tend to do well at this tournament because the lining of the fairways with the trees and everything make you kind of have to do that. So unless you're Colin Morikawa, who hits a really straight golf ball, people who shape shots tend to do well here. So I'm eyeing someone like Justin Thomas this week. This is a golf course, I think, and he has done well here before, but I think this is a golf course he's going to thrive at because he gets to thread shots here and there. One person that I would say not so great, Jordan Spieth, primarily because he's so erratic off the tee. This year he's shown some glimpses of being pretty in control, but for the most part, I don't really trust like a Jordan Spieth. Not to say I won't play him, but if I was to give someone a little bit of a benefit because of the golf course, it'd be Justin Thomas, and someone a little bit of a negative, it'd be Jordan Spieth. And I understand some of the criticism you might have with Justin Thomas because he's erratic off the tee as well. But my argument is when he sees a shot shape, he thrives, he excels in that type of environment, that type of golf course. So I'm not trying to feed you like the best golfer that I think is going to do well here. I'm just saying I'm giving a little bit of a boost to someone like Justin Thomas and a little bit of a hurt to Jordan Spieth. Not to say Jordan Spieth can't win this tournament. I just don't think it sets up perfectly for him. I can go through some of that in the strategy video tomorrow, going golfer by golfer, but I'm just not going to, spend like an hour on it in this video. But you can see on the screen if you want to pause it, read what I have written. You can see all the shot shapes that I have on there that I think are beneficial. All in all, it kind of just, it's pretty even between draws and fades. Like Cantlay has done well here before. He draws the golf ball primarily. John Rahm, Rahm really hasn't done that well at this golf course. But like Tony Finau, he fades the golf ball. He's done well. He's done well at this golf course. Max Homa's won it. He draws the golf. I mean, it doesn't really necessarily matter which one shape or another that you hit. But I think, again, like why I like Justin Thomas, I think it's beneficial for those that are creative. And you've seen that with like Bubba Watson doing well at this golf course in the past. So that's my take on the golf course. I'm not going to go, hole by hole and tell you stuff that you don't need to hear because, quite frankly, any golfer can play any of these holes however they want. Not everyone's going to be hitting from the same distances. Not everyone's going to have the same shot shapes or, angles into the pin. So it's filling your head with air, honestly, if we go hole by hole. Just my take on it. If I could spend more time digging into it, I'd have a better analysis for every golfer in the field, not just a certain type of golfer, which I think most of these golf course analysis does, or what they do. But talking about the tournament, so that was the golf course. Let's talk about the tournament. There are 130 golfers in the field right now. This is an invitational, and usually only 120 people get invited. So if we have any withdrawals, it won't matter. It has to go under 120 for them to replace anybody who withdraws. I don't know why they overpopulated this tournament. Could be because it's a really strong strength of field. If I were to bring up my DK page, let me go ahead and freeze one of these columns and hide one of the other ones. 738 is what I have calculated for the strength of field. That's stronger than last week's tournament, which was very strong. On average, our strength of field is like 270, somewhere between 270 and 300. The last 2 weeks being kind of like, what do they call them? Oh, I forget what it's called, but like elevated events. That's what it's called. Brings a lot of the good golfers here. And you can see, in the OWGR, I forgot to update it. Scotty Scheffler's number one. Doesn't really matter. It's not going to change the strength of field because we still have 1, 2, and 3 here. So just keep that in mind. Let me fix something really quick. Saw a little crack. Okay. Strength of field, strong, like I was saying. which I think kind of helps us pick golfers this week. Sometimes this makes it difficult, but the pricing is pretty soft for the most part. Lots of different lineup combinations can be built this week, and we'll go over that when we kind of go into salaries and stuff like that. But strong strength of field, 130 golfers. Can't wait to see what the tee time pairings are going to look like. Of course, that goes into our marquee tee times. But yeah, I think everyone's excited for this tournament. It should be a pretty good tournament. Let's move on to the next segment. We're going to talk about past optimal lineups and GPP winning lineups, just to give you an idea of what salary structures to use or which structures to be comfortable with. So I've gone through since 2018, basically highlighted the optimal lineup with the little black tick marks here, and then kind of created like a realistic optimal lineup if this is under $49,000 spent. So I show you how much money is spent. Remember, DraftKings has a $50,000 salary cap. So in 2018, your optimal lineup left $1,600 on the table. That's unrealistic. I would never, ever, ever recommend doing that. I think you should always try to spend almost all $50,000. You can leave a couple $100 on the table here and there, but don't get cute. Like, don't get cute with it. I don't think this is the way to go. Plus, if you look at your realistic optimal lineup, you can still get 6 golfers inside the top 10 in 2018. So just to go over the salaries that were used with the optimal lineup, we had 7,800 Bubba Watson, 8,200 Tony Finau, 7,500 Kevin Na, 7,600 Patrick Cantlay, 7,400 Scott Stallings, and 9,900 Phil Mickelson. Now, I would imagine you could probably put, Adam Hadwin in there as well and still take down a GPP, and you would be leaving $4,400 on the table. Now that's insane. I would never do that. You want more of a realistic optimal. What I ended up doing was going with a 10, 8, 3 7s, and a 6 lineup to get to our $50,000. So that's using your highest price guy on this, second highest price guy on the site. I shouldn't even say that. I'm gonna have to eat my words. Is it the second? Yeah, I think it is the second highest guy. And then kind of going balanced with one 6K golfer, which, we see. But you have a 10, an 8. I apologize, 2 8s. So if you remember kind of how I talk about starting with a 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6 method, kind of going that strategy and making 1 or 2 substitutions. Basically, you could start at a 10, sub a 9 down to an 8, put another 8 in there because obviously if you start 10, 9, 8, there's already 1 8. So we're going to put a second 8 in there. And then we have 2 7s and a 6. So still follows the 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6, but we sub 1 9 down to an 8. Now we have 2 8s. So it makes sense, right? Going to 2019, our optimal left $1,100 on the table. So a little unrealistic once again. I have a more realistic optimal leaving $400 on the table. So going over the optimal first, Justin Thomas at $11,000. So a high price guy. And then we go down to Charles Howell III, which was $7,900. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. $8,900 Mark Leishman, $7,900 Charles Howell III, $7,400 Siwoo Kim, $7,200 JB Holmes, and a $6,500 Vaughn Taylor. Probably a little hard to, stomach something like that. So a more realistic lineup is including 2 10K golfers, which, by the way, we see this in the WM Phoenix Open's optimal lineup last week. I'll go over that right after this. But super interesting there. So again, 11, 10, 2 7s, and then 2 6s. So what we're kind of seeing here is you could sub a 9K golfers. Again, if we start with 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6, you'd sub one of the 9s up to a 10, and then you sub an 8 down to a 6, which is hard to get to. As much as that's a more realistic optimal lineup, probably hard to stomach that as well. So maybe I should have tried something different, but as you can tell, there weren't a lot of 7K golfers to really grab. Like, I guess if we were to go 11, 7, 7, 8, 6, what does that give us? So we have $9,000 left. So maybe Adam Scott. This is probably actually more realistic. And this is what I should actually add. So this one would be a 10, 8, 8. So 2 8s. Hard to see with all the different highlights. So let's do that again. 10, 8, 8. So 10, 8, 8. Okay. You know what? I have to do it this way because I cannot see it. 10, 7, 7, 8, 8, 6, right? Yeah, this is right. So again, 10, 8, 8, 7, 7, 6. That is way more palatable than what I just had up there. I don't know why I did it that way, but that equals 49,700. Easy fix. So again, start with the 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6, make one substitution. You got that one. Pretty easy. And of course, I don't have points for that. I imagine I was looking at the optimal lineup and forgot or just didn't think about adding the points at that moment in time. I don't have them. So unfortunately, I can't help validate them while talking to you throughout this video. But you can see all 6 golfers are inside the top 10. I guarantee you're winning a GPP rostering something like that. So that's the purpose. That's the reason why I look at the top 10. Very, very rarely do GPP winning lineups have 6 golfers inside the top 10. So just throwing that out there. And of course, you want the winner and second place. That pretty much ensures you're going to have a GPP winning lineup as long as you get 6 to 6 through the cut. It works out. Because I can already hear my critics telling me, well, that's not really the optimal lineup, but that's not really a realistic optimal lineup. It's like, well, sure, but still going to be in the top 0.1% of lineups. Anyways, moving on. So in 2020, we do have a GPP winning lineup to provide, but your optimal lineup left $3,300 on the table, where your GPP winning lineup left 0. And I have a more realistic optimal lineup that leaves $500 on the table. So let's start with the GPP winning lineup. Those are all the golfers here highlighted in blue. Starts with Adam Scott at 9,000, Kuchar at 7,800, Matsuyama at 9,300, Bryson DeChambeau at 7,900. So we have 2 9K golfers and 2 7K golfers. Then we go down to Collin Morikawa at 81 and Paul Casey at 79. That equals 50,000, and that's a very, very balanced lineup. So we had, 2 9s, 3 7s, and an 8. It's very balanced, and that's what took down a GPP. But you can see one of the golfers down here, 26th place, scored pretty good DraftKings points. Obviously, that's what you need to do to win a GPP, 79 points. And then Paul Casey down here, 37th place, scored 68.5. So there was huge potential to take down this GPP because this lineup only scored 539, where the optimal lineup scored 586. So there's like a 46 point difference, 47 point difference between the two. And then the realistic optimal scored 580.5. So that's like a 40 point difference right there. Definitely viable in order to do that. Now the optimal lineup left a lot of money on the table, meaning we probably don't have a lot of high price guys. So we have, it's all these little black tick marks, a 9K, 7K, 6, 6, 9, 7. Just to go top down, we have 9, 9, 7, 7, 6, 6. Which, again, probably difficult to get to, leaving $3,300 on the table, unrealistic. So let's talk about a realistic optimal lineup. Start with an 11K Rory McIlroy, go to a 9K Adam Scott, Kuchar, DeChambeau at 7K, and then 2 6K golfers, which, doing a 10, 9, 8, I'm sorry, there is no 8, 10, 9, 7, 7, 6, 6, not an uncommon GPP winning lineup, or not an uncommon optimal lineup. So that's a little bit more reasonable. Probably still hard to get to. I still think you start with the 10K golfer. It's probably the easiest way to start a build, especially in this event. We'll get there with the buckets and stuff. But yeah, I like starting with a 10K golfer. Just going over these last 3 years, or the first 3 years that I have. In 2021, optimal was a bit more realistic. 49,600 was spent, so you left $400 on the table. And that started Homa at 8K, Finau at 9, Burns at 7, Cam Smith at 8, Victor Hovland at 8, and Matt Fitzpatrick at 7. This is probably the most balanced optimal lineup I've ever seen. So to repeat that, that's a 9, 3 8s, and 2 7s. That's the most, seriously, the most balanced I've ever seen, ever. GPP winning lineup started with a 10-4 ROM, so starting with a 10K golfer. Finau at 9, Homa at 8, Burns at 7, Clark at 7, and Cameron Tringali at 7 as well. And that was a pretty good GPP lineup. 5 golfers inside the top 10 and the 6th guy in 26th place. That is a really, really good lineup. And pretty much followed the 10-9-8-7-7-6 method, just didn't have to drop down to the 6. Went to a $7,100 Wyndham Clark instead. So, still following the 10-9-8-7-7-6 method. In 2022, $300 were left on the table for the optimal, and the GPP scored 50,000. So, the GPP winning lineup, I'm kind of going back and forth, starting with GPP and whatever, but your GPP winning lineup started with 10,000, then to a 9. Will Zalatoris at 8, Joaquin Niemann at 7, and then 2 6K golfers. That's a pretty ballsy lineup, honestly. Not a lot of people start that way. It's a really good, I think that's a really good start, honestly, but it still kind of follows the 10-9-8-7-7-6, just obviously 1-7 moves down to a 6. Your optimal lineup started very similar. Morikawa at 10K, Victor Hovland at 9, Adam Scott at 8, Niemann at 7, Cam Young at 6, and Matt McNeely at 7. So that is actually your 10-9-8-7-7-6 start right there. And that was your optimal lineup. Your optimal lineup that year scored 674, where the GPP scored 614. So there's like a 60-point gap between those two. So obviously a lot of room where someone could come in and steal that GPP. And that is basically the end of your optimal lineup and GPP winning lineups for the Genesis Invitational. A lot of what I saw, start with a 10K. I mean, just starting 10-9-8-7-7-6 is pretty good. It also kind of confirms those that like balanced approaches, that a balanced lineup can do well here as well. So even if you wanted to do a 10-9-8-7-7-7, that would work. Or even starting with 2 9s, 2 8s, and 2 7s also kind of provides pretty decent results. So it's kind of wide open. I personally, if I was building lineups, and say I'm building 100 lineups, I think I'd do the 10-9-8-7-7-6 in 50% of my lineups. And then in, say, 20% of my lineups, I'm doing 10-9-8-7-6-6. And then another 20% of my lineups, probably going to start with 9-9-8-8 or 9-9-8-7-7-6 or 9-9-8-8-7-6, something like that, to that effect. Or put it a different way. 20% of my lineups, I'll make sure there's no 10K golfer in it. And basically the other 80%, I'm going to put a 10K golfer in it. I think that's probably the easiest way to go. And it's still going to follow like 10-9-8-7-7-6 method, basically. So I'll go over that in the strategy video tomorrow, but I think that's going to work well here at this tournament. My 2 cents, at least. All right, let's review. Let me actually pull it up. Let's review the WM Phoenix Open. I'm going to start here with the bucket system, and then we're going to go into marquee tee times and any other information really regarding the sweet spot process. So I'm going to remove all the filters that we're currently on here. Remember, I like to talk about the anchor buckets, so those were the filters that we're on. Now, one thing that I always ask you to do when we go over these reviews is basically just look at this column here. The Y's indicate that the bucket was successful. The N's indicate that they were not successful. And you can see 2 buckets on here that were not successful. Now, what does that mean? Basically, I take how many golfers were in the top 10 that fit in those buckets, and I compare it to my projections. If that number lies outside of the projection, either above it or below it, I'll look at the optimal lineup. How many golfers were in the optimal lineup from that bucket? And if that still is above or below, then that's how we fail the bucket. And you can see there's 2 failures, which means out of 36 buckets, 34 were correct, which is pretty on par. 33 out of 36 is kind of what I normally see. But on top of that, I now create sweet spot optimals that follow the bucket logic absolutely to the T. And I review to see whether or not it still takes down a GPP or how close it was to the optimal lineup. So I'll scroll through this. You can see all the buckets, all the Ys, all the no's. So just letting you know that it was pretty successful. If we review the optimal lineup versus the GPP winning lineup for this tournament, you're going to see I have a sweet spot lineup in here as well. And I will go over that towards the end of here. And we're going to talk about the bucket process and how well it did. I mean, you obviously saw, but just to reconfirm it, we'll go over the sweet spot optimal. Your optimal lineup had a $10,000 Scotty Scheffler in it. It also had an $11,000 Jon Rahm in it. If you would have told me in the beginning of the week that 2 10K golfers were going to be in the optimal lineup, I wouldn't have put, Rahm and Scheffler together. I'd have put 2 lower 10Ks because the optimal lineup is the best lineup you can build under $50,000. How do you put the most expensive guy in with one of the other most expensive guys? I think Scotty was the 3rd most expensive guy, maybe the 4th. I think he was the 3rd. But Rahm was the most expensive. So how do you do that? That's crazy. Well, it includes grabbing a $6,500 Nick Taylor, as well as a $6,400 Dylan Fratelli, and a $6,600 Patrick Rogers. That's how. And then you just add in a $9,200 Sung JM. Crazy. So that's a 10-10-9, 6, 6, 6 start. Crazy. Now, your GPP winning lineup used Scotty Scheffler at 10-3, which makes sense. It also had Nick Taylor in it, which again makes sense. Then we drop down to a Tyrrell Hatton at 8,400, Ricky Fowler at 8,000, Wyndham Clark at 72, and then we got to go all the way down to Tom Kim at $9,100. It's a pretty good lineup. Starts 10-9, so Scheffler down to Tom Kim, which was a 9K golfer. Tyrrell Hatton at 8, Ricky Fowler at 8, Wyndham Clark at 7, Nick Taylor at 6. So it's a 10-9, 8-8, 7-6 start. Again, if you start 10-9, 8, 7, 7, 6, make up to 2 substitution, this one just being 1, moving a 7 up to an 8. There you go. You got your GPP winning lineup. Now, your sweet spot optimal, which is including all of the bucket conditionals, and I'll show you that again. So you can see the sweet spot optimal, how many golfers it selects from those buckets, and you can compare it to the projections I have. So I'll scroll through this really slowly, and you can compare. Remember, we're always rounding up with the max projection, so you can see this bucket here, 1.56. That rounds up to 2, and that is exactly what the the optimizer selected using the strict bucket conditionals. So you can, again, I'll scroll through this slowly. You can see the projections versus the sweet spot optimal, so you can validate me. But if we use that lineup uses up all $50,000, scores 632. Your GPP winning lineup scored 589, and your optimal scored 633.5. So just to review, sweet spot optimal scored 632. Your optimal scored 633.5. So I was off by 1.5 points, or I should say the bucket process was, the bucket system. And that was using 10K golfer and Scotty Scheffler, $9,800 Justin Thomas, $9,200 Sung JM, Wyndham Clark at 7,200, Kurt Kitayama at 7, and then Nick Taylor at 6. So that's closely following the 10-9-8-7-7-6 method, but we're subbing the 8K golfer up to another 9K golfer, and that's it. So I have learned over the last few weeks to be a little bit more open when it comes to building lineups. I've been kind of following the 10-9-8-7-7-6 method very strictly and not really including two 6K golfers all that much. And I've been very biased when building my lineups. So that doesn't necessarily help when you're trying to hit the optimal lineup. Like, you gotta have to have an unbiased look. But I've been chasing like a ton of money that you can win with certain builds. So I need to kind of rein it in a little bit, keep it open, use my exposures to help me out. Yeah, Sweet Spot Optimal, pretty darn well. And to top the review off, I'm going to put a filter on this and we're going to go over the marquee tee times. So if you don't know what the marquee tee times are, it's basically your top groups, or my top groups, when taking into consideration the sweet spot ranks for each of these golfers, adding them all up together in the groups that they're in, and then rank ordering them from the lowest ranks to the highest. And that's what I get my best groups. So in the number one group, you had Scottie Scheffler, Tom Kim, and Viktor Hovland. Which doesn't make sense to me why Tom Kim isn't highlighted. I think I forgot to highlight it. I forgot to highlight him. Let's do that right now. I like to highlight your GPP winning lineup with this blue color, just to show you. I want to be completely transparent with you guys. I don't want to hide anything. So basically, your top 9 groups in an event are what I call the marquee tee times. And it just works out because the optimizer, with all the conditionals I have in there, only allows me to look at 9 marquee tee times with everything else that I include in it. So I only choose the top 9. Probably would choose the top 7 if I'm being honest. And that's why you see these lighter green colors for the last 2 groups. Really only look at the top 7. And with this, here are the rules that I have. In the marquee tee times, so all the golfers, if you include all these golfers into one pool, so this is one pool of golfers, you want to select somewhere between 2 to 4 of them. So just if we don't look at tee times, you want to select 2 to 4 of them. But the other rule is you do look at tee times and you don't select more than one golfer from a group. So when we go and we look at this, Scottie Scheffler, Tom Kim, and Viktor Hovland are in a group together. Select only one of them. And that's Scottie Scheffler, obviously, for me. So you can see 2 golfers were in the optimal lineup, and they weren't in the same group. However, the guy who won the GPP for the $5 Drive the Green included Scheffler and Tom Kim, who did pair up together. So you can win a GPP doing that. But I'm always chasing the optimal. And in the optimal, it was Scottie Scheffler and Jon Rahm. They were in group 1 and group 2. The 2 out of 4 golfers hit. The golfers in different groups hit as well. So the marquee tee times, 100% successful. Buckets, 1.5 points behind the optimal lineup. I think the sweet spot process was very successful last week. I went really heavy on Jon Rahm and Patrick Cantlay, and Patrick Cantlay missed the cut. So again, I need to open up my exposures and just let the bucket system do its work. Probably has a better opportunity for me to hit the optimal lineup, as opposed to, well, I can really narrow down the possibility of hitting the optimal by narrowing down my, or anchoring around golfers. So like I said, I went with Cantlay. So you can see Jon Rahm is right here. Patrick Cantlay was down here somewhere. Or was he? Right here. So they're not in the same group. You know, Rahm was in group 2. Cantlay was in group 3. I went Rahm and Cantlay in about 60% of my lineups. That's not how you get it done. That's how you lose money. And I also meant I didn't have Scottie Scheffler, which you need the winner in your lineups to cash a decent amount of money. Worst week of the year for me so far, but 2 weeks ago, best week. So now I'm right back to break even for the year. So hopefully this next week I learn my lesson, build my lamps a little bit better. One can only hope. So that is the end of the review of the WM Phoenix Open. Let's get into the buckets for the Genesis Invitational. If you're following along with me, or if you want to follow along with me, I should say, there is a cheat sheet, a link to that cheat sheet in the description below. Go click on that link, if you want to follow along with me, I'm butchering this right now. It'll bring you to the cheat sheet, file menu, go down to make a copy. That way you can follow along with me. It'll allow you to put the filters on here like I'm about to do right now. I'm going to put filters on here. We're going to talk about each bucket, each stat, I should say, and talk about my favorite golfers in each of those buckets. I'm going to hide some of this fluff so you don't get confused. And basically what we're going to do is go through each of the bucket or each of the stats, each of the buckets within those stats, and the projections that go along with it to give you an idea of where to start building your lineups from. So again, just to remind you, I said this kind of in the beginning of the video, this is to help you diversify your lineups. Bucket system analyzes the top 10 of every single year that this tournament's been played. And it determines, based off of success rates of golfers in these buckets, as well as the quality of golfer in the field within those buckets, a projection. So I know that might have been hard to follow. I'm basically telling you how many golfers to select from each of these buckets, and we're going to go through each one of these buckets. It's up to you to choose the right golfers. Because I can't give you that. I can just give you the guidelines. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to, again, go through each of these buckets, tell you how many golfers you want to select from these buckets, and it's up to you to basically either record the golfers that I talk about, or find your anchors somehow, some way. Anyways, I don't want to. This is really getting nuanced and really getting into the nitty gritty to narrow down. Just think of us. We're trying to aim to hit the target, right? We have to look very narrow in order to figure out which plays to put together or what type of plays to put together to hit the optimal lineup. So to me, it's all about aiming small to hit small. We don't hit the optimal. Maybe we hit the GPP winning lineup instead. That's the whole premise behind the bucket system. So if you normally get confused about this, or you're coming to this video for the first time, that's what this whole next part is all about. Just trying to narrow down our target, narrow down our aim to hit our target, essentially. So as a reminder, projections, this max projection column, we always round up. I want to give you the raw number so you see it. 2.4 rounds up to 3. 1.4, so this minimum projection, we always round down. 1.4 goes to 0. Or I'm sorry, 1.4 goes down to 1. Ugh, my bad. So this projection for the last year 1 bucket would be 1 to 3. So again, just to repeat that, when we're looking for last year 1, or when we're looking for golfers, we kind of want to start maybe looking at our last year 1 bucket, because we already know we want at least one of them, but a max of 3. I do have another projection over here. This includes the sweet spot ranks, which kind of gives it a more overall feel. So these projections usually are a bit more conservative. If for whatever reason I see that this is either lower or higher than this one, I will alter my projections. And if we ever come across that, you'll know. I'll let you know. I can't see anything really on the screen right now that would justify me jumping into it, but once we get there, I'll let you know. As I see it, now let's start with the last year buckets. Last year 1, we want somewhere between 1 to 3. So if you're following along with me on the cheat sheet, you go to that dream sheet portion of it, you put that filter on, and we filter out everyone from this last year bucket except for last year 1s. So we want somewhere between, or I shouldn't even say we want, somewhere between 1 to 3. It's a projection of what's going to be inside the top 10. So 1 to 3 golfers from this bucket will be inside the top 10. Again, it's usually 34 to 36%, or geez, 90%. 34 buckets out of 36 are usually correct any given week. I imagine this bucket's going to be successful just depending on just looking at all the golfers in here. So to me, this is a really good bucket to start with when building your lineups. Select somewhere between 1 to 3. Now we see they're all high-priced golfers. You probably can't put 3 golfers in your lineup from this bucket. That's the other thing you have to consider. But I bet you could put 2, and if not, 1. Personally for me, now these are golfers who topped 20 last year. I'm looking at Justin Thomas. I said it earlier in the video when it came to the golf course information. I think this course benefits someone like him, who's a bit more creative, who likes to shape shots. I like him a lot. But don't get me wrong, I like Rory a lot. I like Scotty a lot. I like Xander a lot. Xander was kind of where my first look went to until I kind of started thinking about it. I'm like, I kind of like Justin Thomas a little bit more. But yeah, like, you guys can choose just about anyone 8K and above, which obviously you see basically every golfer except for Sepp Straka and Ches Reavie. So I'm not really looking at these two golfers. I'm more looking at the rest of these up here, and I'm probably anchoring around two of these guys because it's going to be easy. In my opinion, it will be easy. No one is that expensive. So like if you want to do like a Rory Max Homa lineup, I mean, you're starting out with what? $20,000. You have basically $29,800 left to spend on the next four golfers. It looks tight when you first start this way, but you incorporate a 6K golfer into your lineups and then it balances out and it's easier to build with. So I don't mind starting something like that. I'm looking at least grabbing two guys from here. Let's go to the next one. Last year twos. Again, 1 to 3 is what I'm projecting to be inside the top 10. You can select anywhere between 1 to 3 golfers. Let's take a look who those are. What do you know? The top price guy, Jon Rahm, is here, followed by Tony Finau. Really like Tony Finau here. Sung J M, Patrick Cantlay. A lot of good golfers, 8K and above. I mean, we have 7 of them. And then we have a lot of good fill-ins. So if we started with the bucket before, and we come here and we're like, man, I kind of want to add someone from here. I imagine if you start with a 10 and a 9K over there, you can come here and grab one of these 7 or 6s. However, maybe you start with 1, 10 or 9 over there, and then you grab a 10 or 9 over here, or even an 8. Because that's obviously a possibility. I don't really have a lean one way or the other. I'm going to let the optimizer do its work tomorrow when I build lineups on stream. And then also when I build my own lineups, I'm going to let it kind of figure out who it likes. I mean, I'm really liking Tony Finau from this group. So I actually don't mind starting with like Justin Thomas from the other one, because remember our projection was 1 to 3. So I'm grabbing one from there, coming over here and grabbing Tony Finau, because this is also a projection of 1 to 3. I like kind of that start a lot. JT, Tony Finau. I like it a lot. But entirely up to you guys. So that's your last year bucket 2. Last year bucket 3, we want somewhere between 0 to 1. Now, when it's 1 point between each other, I always widen that margin by 2. I want a 2-point buffer for all my projections. So although this is 0 to 1, it will end up being 0 to 2. So we can't go the opposite way. I would rather bring the minimum down to increase that buffer, but it's already at 0. So that means we got to punch this one up a little bit to make it 2. And like we take in the sweet spot ranks, it's pretty darn close of being over 1, which means we round up to 2. So I don't mind. Ultimately, I don't mind. So 0 to 2 out of this bucket. Again, their projections of being inside the top 10. Kind of failed to say that every once in a while. But there's one golfer that there's a couple golfers actually. The first one, obviously, I gravitated to was Ricky Fowler. I think he's playing really good golf, and I think this is a golf course that's really good for him. So if you wanted to select someone from this bucket, not terrible. Now, remember, the projection is 0 to 2. Could there be a third golfer from here to be inside the top 10? Sure. But I'd rather be more conservative and just select 1 or 2 and just move on. Because I'm fine with that. Just select 1 or 2 and move on. These guys at the higher 7K range, a little bit harder to do if I were to start, like say a JT Finau lineup and then come to this bucket and try to grab one guy from here. This isn't a bucket I'm going to really try to grab someone from. I'll let the optimizer kind of be like, hey, we've got this much money left. Let's grab someone from this bucket and just leave it at that. So I don't have a lean one way or the other. Decent golfers from here. But yeah, nothing that I feel super confident with. Going to the next bucket, 0 to 1 last year 4s. Again, we want that 2-point buffer. One thing I forgot to mention are the frequency rates. Hopefully you guys have been paying attention to that. The first 2 buckets, every single year we've seen at least one golfer inside the top 10. That's what this frequency rate means. And you can see the minimums, which is the bare minimum that we've seen every single year. 1 ends up being the number for top 10s from these buckets. Also, if you look at the optimal lineup analysis here, 1 from each of those buckets have also been in the optimal lineup every single year. So that's something to take into consideration. These other 2 buckets that we're kind of talking about, not so much. Not super successful. So take that into consideration as well. And again, we're on last year 4, so 0 to 2 is our projection to be inside the top 10. And it falls off after Siwoo Kim pretty hard, which, hey, if you like 1 or 2 of these guys, by all means, go ahead and select them. I see names that I don't mind playing here. Up to you guys, though. I'm going to move on. Last year 5s. These are guys who missed the cut last year. A lot of times, this is a bucket you want to select from, and it's pretty darn close to having a 100% frequency rate of being inside the top 10. It also has a pretty high frequency rate, and by inside the top 10, I mean at least 1 golfer being inside the top 10. Optimal lineup has almost had every year having a guy from that bucket inside the optimal lineup as well. All but 1 year. So, pretty interesting bucket here. Guys who missed the cut, don't be afraid of that. So this is from last year. Who missed the cut last year? We want somewhere between 0 to 2, and it's almost 100% frequency rate. So let's take a look at those guys. Starts with Sam Burns, which my boy Shot Like Harden's going to like quite a bit. Now, I include withdraws in this bucket, so you can see Wyndham Clark withdrew last year. That's what the 90 that's what 90 represents to me, is a missed cut. Really like Seamus Power. I'm not sure if this course really sets up for him. Really, any of these guys in the 7K range, I like quite a bit. Like Brendan Steele. This is a course that I think he has done well at. Yeah, his course history is pretty decent. I don't mind someone like Brendan Steele. Or even Patrick Rogers, who did pretty well last week. He was in the optimal lineup last week. So don't mind, having either of these guys in the low 7K range. I think this is a good bucket that helps you kind of build lineups. I mean, Shot Like Harden, you're going to want this guy, obviously, which, hey, more power to you. But I really like the glue that kind of puts together lineups down here a little bit more. And then last year's 6s are golfers who just haven't played this tournament last year. Now, this includes rookies who've never played this tournament ever. It includes veterans who've never played this tournament dating back to 2013, because that's where my data goes back to, is 2013. And it also could include veterans that have played this tournament every single year of their, existence on tour, except for last year. So that's golfers in this bucket. And I forgot to tell you what the projection is. 1 to 3. And that's pretty common with also the conservative projection. Optimal lineup doesn't have it in there every single year. 60% frequency rate there, but 100% frequency rate of getting someone inside the top 10, which kind of tells me probably high price guys do this. And we don't really have any high price guys in that bucket this week. There are some interesting names, though, like Tom Kim, Jason Day, Matt Fitzpatrick, Tyrrell Hatton, Justin Rose, even Taylor Montgomery. Probably steering clear from Maverick. Oh, I thought I saw Maverick McNeely's name. Never mind. Some interesting names here. I like a lot of these names down here as well. I'm not going to shy away from like S.H. Kim, Nick Hardy, Thomas Dietrich, Kurt Kitayama. I like players from this bucket quite a bit. So 1 to 3 was the projection. I could see that happening pretty easy. And in fact, I could see this bucket actually producing like 4 or 5. So it could break the projections, or it could break the bucket, could fail the bucket, I should say. That's fine. I'm still going to select up to 3 and not go more and not go less than 1. I'll keep it right between 1 to 3. I like this bucket. I like a lot of the golfers that I'm seeing right now. So 1 to 3 is my projection, and I actually stand by that, by how many golfers you should select from there. Going to the next bucket, which is last week. So these are golfers who either played last week or didn't. Those that didn't are in the last week 6 bucket. Those that did are separated between the 5 buckets here at the top. First one being guys who topped 20 last week. Now, at this event, we've seen a 100% frequency rate of actually having one guy from this bucket finish inside the top 10, which means if you top 20 last week, you have a pretty good shot at top 10ing this week. 100% frequency rate, only a 60% frequency rate of being in the optimal lineup. And we're projecting 1 to 3. So let's take a look. And I'm assuming if we have a 100% frequency rate of one guy being inside the top 10 every single year, it's probably a high price guy that just didn't finish inside the top 5 to ensure an optimal lineup bid. So I'm sure that's what we're going to see. Obviously, we know Scotty Scheffler won last week, so let's go ahead. Now, if you're following along with me, make sure that you go back into last year bucket and go to select all. So now we include every golfer. And then with the last week bucket, go to last week 1. Jon Rahm, your top price guy, Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, Xander Schauffele, Tony Finau. So again, I'm projecting somewhere between 1 to 3 to be inside the top 10. Pretty easy to think one of these guys is going to do it, right? Like at least one of these guys will be inside the top 10, if not up to 3 of them. And we could even have more than that, but chances are you might not be able to build a lineup with some of these guys. Because again, if Rahm, Scheffler, JT finish 1, 2, 3, at most you can put 2 of them in your lineup. You probably can't put a third one. But realistically, you could only probably play 1 of them because of the price tag being so much. Anyone who's finishing 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, depending on their price tag, might fit the optimal lineup better than putting 2 of these guys together. So keep that in mind when we go through these projections. What's the realistic possibility that 3 of these guys finish inside the top 10? You know, if this projection holds 1 to 3, do the 3 of these golfers have a better percentage of finishing inside the top 10 than the rest of them combined? Probably not, but you know, your own gut feeling probably tells you, yeah, probably. I mean, like maybe these 3 can't really beat out these 5 or 6, 7, 8, whatever. But that's a choice you're gonna have to make. Again, I like Tony, and just seeing Justin Thomas and Tony in this bucket together make me feel better thinking about selecting these 2 guys in my lineups. I think that's probably the way I want to go, honestly. But moving on to our last week 2, this is that 20 to 40 range. So whoever finished 20th to 40th place last week, those golfers are included here. Not 100% frequency rate to be inside the top 10. Our projection's 1 to 2, but remember we want a 2-point buffer, and we always want to bring the minimum down to 0 whenever possible. You remember in the last year buckets, we couldn't do that with some of those because they were already at 0, so then we bumped up the max to 2. Well, here we're going max to bump this down to 0. So this is a 0 to 2 projection in my eyes. Let's take a look at the golfers here. Rory McIlroy at 10,500. Easy choice selection, honestly. But some fillers down here that pretty interesting. You know, we've already seen Sahith Theegala in some of these buckets that you want at least one guy from. Actually, that's not true. We've only looked at the last year buckets, and last year 3 was not one of those buckets. So never mind. My apologies. But still a name to look at nonetheless, especially if you're not going to start with Rory or even Max Homa. I don't mind adding one of these 3 golfers. If I were to go like JT into Tony Finau and then one of these guys, kind of like that. I mean, I could also make the argument of kind of going maybe JT or Finau with Rory or Max Homa. Yeah, and I'll let the buckets or the optimizer kind of do this for me. Figure out what the best duos are, and go from there. I actually might have a different strategy this week. Now that I come to think of it, I'm gonna deploy something I did last year where I was really successful last year. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I don't mind a lot of these names. Probably stay away from the 6K range. Like I'm not gonna actively seek out a lot of these golfers. And I really don't have a feel on any of these low 7K golfers. So Again, I'll let the optimizer do its work. Moving on. Last week threes, that 40 to 60 range, we want somewhere between 0 to 1. Remember, 2-point buffer. We're bumping this up to 0 to 2. It starts with Victor Hovland down to Tom Kim, and then it goes into the 7K range. Pretty deep, well, I mean, a good chunk of 7K golfers, and then the 6K range. I don't really have a feel one way or the other. Can't say I really like Tom Kim at a course like this, but I don't mind Victor Hovland. Again, I'll let the optimizer do its work, see what golfers it, puts me on, stuff like that. Interesting names, nonetheless. Last week 4 is the next bucket. That 60-80 range is kind of a no-man zone. Don't like golfers from this bucket usually. 0 to 1 is the actual projection, but again, we'll bump it up to 0 to 2. Not a huge frequency rate, not a great success rate. 0% optimal lineup frequency, so not a good bucket. And believe it or not, Cameron Young is in here, which I'm sure will be a really popular golfer. He's currently 9th in my model, so it's a hard one to swallow. I don't mind staying away from this bucket completely. You need to make a ownership, pivot or something like that. You want leverage. This is a good reason not to be on someone like Cameron Young. But of course, he could be the one guy that makes this projection, 0 to 1. He can be the one. I don't mind staying away from it, honestly. Moving on to the next bucket, golfers who missed the cut last week. Not a super high frequency rate. Not terrible. Shows up in the optimal lineup here and there. Projecting 1 to 3 to be inside the top 10. So let's take a look at the golfers in that bucket. Starts with Colin Morikawa, Patrick Cantlay, Taylor Montgomery. So that projection being 1 to 3. I kind of hate it because I would have loved Patrick Cantlay had he been playing well. He's been garbage. Let's be real. Since the tournament champions, there's something wrong with this game. It's not been great. Colin Morikawa last week should have been kind of like a feast for him. Weather wasn't super dramatic. That course, it seemed like it would have done plenty of good for him. I don't know why he played so bad. So that kind of has me hesitant with him. He did get second here last year, and I also thought he wasn't a very good course fit for this golf course last year, but he hits the ball so dang straight that any little curve that you want to put on the golf ball, he doesn't really have to worry about it. He's just that much in control. But again, that was last year. Probably more kind of analysis needs to be done on Colin Morikawa this year, but hey, by all means, if you want to play him, play him. And I'm not really going to talk about the rest of these guys. It's a ton of 7 and 6K golfers, a lot of glue. Projections 1 to 3. This bucket has how many golfers in it? 53 golfers, when on average it has 32. That is increasing the projections because of how many golfers are in here, but it is a low success rate bucket. So I would say volume alone helps this bucket out, not so much quality. So how I view that is it doesn't help people. It doesn't help me pick people like Colin Morikawa or Patrick Cantlay. They definitely have the better possibility to make this projection work out because the likelihood of them being inside the top 10 is, much better than a lot of these guys down here. But it's a sheer numbers game with all these golfers in that bucket. It's just one of those golfer versus the field type of moments. What would you rather take? Morikawa, Cantlay versus the field, or would you take the field? Personally, I'd probably take the field, if I'm being honest. I have no real faith in either of these two guys, which means one of them will finish inside the top 10. So pick your poison. And in the last bucket are golfers who didn't play last week, which we have 45 in that bucket. Usually we have 60. It's 100% frequency rate, but I guarantee you that has more to do with it being a volume bucket. Remember the bucket we were just talking about? There's 53 in there, where we usually see 32. I think volume alone drives this projection up, and I could see maybe 3 or 4 golfers from this bucket being inside the top 10. This one, because the success rate's a little high, frequency rate's a little high. I mean, projection 0 to 2, and I'm very comfortable with that being 0 to 2. Although it says 1 to 2, it's 1 to 2 because the success rate's pretty decent. I don't find it that successful. I personally, even with the optimal lineup being 100% frequency rate, I think just the fact there's 15 less golfers in that bucket probably makes it worse. But let's take a look at the golfers in it. I'm getting ahead of myself. We need to look at the golfers first. Yeah, so you have Zalatoris in here, Justin Rose, Adam Scott, Tiger Woods, Thomas Dietrich. Interesting. 0 to 2, there's enough interesting names here to fill that projection. So you can grab 2 golfers pretty easy. Like Zalatoris seems like a slam dunk for a lot of people. And Justin Rose just won the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. We haven't seen Adam Scott in a long time. I think Tournament Champions might have been the last time we saw him. Or Sony Open. Maybe it was Sony Open. Yeah, I don't know. 0 to 2 is a perfect projection for this. I don't think more than 2 golfers from this bucket finish inside the top 10. And with that being said, I don't have an anchor play. Like, I'm not going to select one. I'm not going out of my way to actually grab one of these guys. So again, I'll let the optimizer do its work. That concludes the last week bucket. Let's go into the course history buckets. And we're going to start with course history 1. Those are golfers who have really good course history here, that 0 to 20 range. So their average finishing position at this golf course falls in that range, which means, you know, like top 10s, top 20s. Pretty darn good. If you're following along with me on the cheat sheet, just make sure that you select everyone from the last week bucket, as we were just talking about everyone there, and clear everyone out of the course history bucket and go to course history 1. Rahm, Schauffele, Hovland, Cam Young, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Adam Scott. We kind of already eliminated these guys from our selection, which makes it really interesting. I don't mind going with Matt Fitzpatrick. You know, this isn't a slam dunk bucket, by the way. 0 to 2 is what I'm projecting to be inside the top 10. And even like the conservative projection's not that great. We don't see a high frequency rate of being inside the optimal lineup, and we don't see a high frequency rate of being inside the top 10. So it's not really a bucket that has a lot of confidence in it, which is really interesting because Rahm is in it, Xander is in it, Victor Hovland. I don't mind kind of steering clear of this bucket. I mean, I don't know. Let's put it this way. If I'm making 100 lineups, I would say 10 to 20% of them, I'll have 2 guys in this bucket in those lineups. So it's out of 100 lineups, I might have 20 lineups. I have 2 of them in it. Then I probably put 60%, 40%. Having 1 guy in it, and then the remaining 40 having 0 in it. That's kind of how I would look at this. So 40% of my lineups won't have 1 golfer from this bucket in them. 40% will have at least 1, and then the remaining 20 will have at least 2. That's kind of how I look at it. I think that's a pretty decent thought process behind a bucket like this. Let's move on to the next one. Course history 2. We want somewhere between 1 to 3. 100% frequency rate of having a top 10 golfer in there. 100% frequency rate of producing an optimal lineup golfer. So, course history 2s. Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Max Homa, Colin Morikawa, Patrick Cantlay. This bucket is interesting. So 1 to 3, 100% frequency rate of being inside the top 10, 100% frequency rate of producing an optimal lineup golfer. Boy, does that make me really think it's either Rory or Max Homa. Just seeing all the other buckets, I'm really gravitating towards these 2 guys now. I might drop Justin Thomas as one of my top guys that I want to play and include Rory or Max Homa. Maybe I go JT Max Homa. Maybe I go Rory Tony Finau, now that I think of it. Again, I'll let the optimizer kind of decide a little bit, but oof, some great names in here. And even like decent 9K golfers, 8K, well, 3 8Ks, they're okay. And then some decent 7Ks. So I don't mind any of these guys. Super interesting. Okay. Going on to the next one. 1 to 3 course history 3s. 100% frequency rate of top 10, but only 80% frequency rate of being in the optimal lineup. I bet you we find, what, Tony Finau in this bucket? Yep, JT and Tony Finau, which makes it interesting. It's a 1-3 projection. And really Finau and Thomas, even Burns, they're the only 9K and above golfers. 1-3. Not a super high success rate. That's kind of concerning. 100% frequency rate, though. We're seeing about the same amount of golfers that we normally do. Well, now it just makes me feel like, yeah, I think it's either JT Homa or it's Rory and Finau from the last bucket we were just looking at. Just starting that way and then building out from there. I think that's probably pretty decent. Pretty decent start. Yeah, I don't mind that. I'm going to move on, though. I'm not going to talk about the rest of those guys. Like, there's quite a bit of them at 7K and lower that we don't really need to talk about. Moving on to the next one, course history 4s. Pretty high frequency rate of being inside the top 10. Not so much with the frequency rate of being the optimal lineup. 0-2 is a projection. Starts with Sung Jae and then Jason Day. 0-2. That's interesting. I wouldn't have mind playing either of these guys, and I wouldn't have mind playing both of them, honestly, before really, diving into the buckets. But I do like golfers like Alex Smalley, the 6K range. I don't mind even going to like Troy Merritt. There are some names, like Emiliano Grillo, like that seems pretty decent. So I don't know. I don't know if I could start with one of these two guys up at the top. I don't know if I can do Sung Jae, to be quite honest. Interesting. I'm going to move on. Course history 5s. 0-1, but of course we bumped that up to 0-2. Not a high frequency rate of being inside the top 10. Not a high frequency rate of being the optimal lineup. Let's take a look at the golfers here. Now, course history 5 means they basically average a missed cut at this event, which is not good. Tyrrell Hatton is in this bucket, but he probably just has one finish where he missed the cut. You don't really want to look at something like that too strong. Same kind of goes with Corey Connors. But also, they did miss the cut. So, not a high frequency rate, not a high projection to be inside the top 10. 0-2. Yeah, 0-2. Yeah, not a golfer. There's no golfers in here that I really want to anchor my lineups around. So, I'm cool with that projection. Course history 6 is golfers who've just never played this tournament ever before. We have 53 of those golfers in this bucket where we normally see 26. That's driving this projection up to 0-2. But the frequency rate of being inside the top 10 is pretty high, not so much in the optimal lineup. So, course history 6s starts with Tom Kim. How many do we have? 27? Is that what I have here? 53. Where's that number coming from? Let's see. Hold on. Oh, I know why. My apologies. I forgot to clean this up. This is going to change the projections a little bit, but not enough to be worried about anything. Because all these buckets take into account how many golfers are in those buckets versus other buckets. It also includes the strength of field points and stuff like that. So this does go up to 0-2. Actually drops course history. No, this was always 0-2 as well. So it doesn't really change anything. I don't see any differences. If you did, you can leave them in the comment section, but 0-2 course history 6 is still the same thing. Tom Kim, Taylor Montgomery. Like, this just tells me not to play Taylor Montgomery. Or if I do, then I have to really lock out a bunch of other guys. Same kind of goes with Thomas Dietrich and Kurt Kitayama. Like, I like these guys quite a bit, but the projections are not favorable for either of them, for any of them. So, we'll see. I'll let the optimizer do its work. I'm okay with that. Let's move on to the 4th bucket, which is recent form. So recent form 1s are guys who have really good recent form. This is anyone ranging from an average win to finishing 19th place every tournament they played. So it's between 1 to 20. Projecting 1 to 3 being inside that bucket this year, or being inside the top 10. Pretty high frequency rate of at least producing one top 10. Not so much a high frequency rate of optimal lineup guys, but we do have 11 in that bucket this year, where we see 10 on usually. So again, if you're following along with me, make sure you select everyone in the course history bucket, and then go to the recent form, clear them out, and select recent form ones. Jon Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, Max Homa, Tony Finau, all the names you would normally think. One guy's missing from there that's really notable is Rory McIlroy. So again, we're projecting 1 to 3. That is our projection. High success rate, high frequency rate. I've already mentioned Finau, Homa, and JT. Remember, I'm thinking starting Rory and then Tony Finau. But I've already mentioned Justin Thomas's name. I've already mentioned Max Homa's name as guys that I kind of want to build around. Makes it pretty interesting. So again, you want 1 to 3. I'm not sure who. Let's take a look at the next bucket, which is that recent form 2 bucket. This is that 20 to 40 range, and we want somewhere between 2 to 4. Now, I'm going to make a correction here. I always look at this one as a conservative method. This is, if we round up from this number, it's 3. And remember, I always want a 2-point buffer from the minimum to the maximum. So yeah, 2 to 4, which was our original projections, that makes sense. That's a 2-point buffer. But when I include the sweet spot ranks, this actually goes down to a max of 3. Now, I'm not going to hurt the max, but I am going to bring the minimum down to 1. You understand what I'm getting at? Because this is 3, I want a 2-point buffer between this number and the minimum. That brings that down to a 1, where normally it would be a 2, just if we were looking at these numbers alone right here. So really, the projection I'll be putting in the optimizer is 1 to 4. So I'm projecting 1 to 4 to be inside the top 10 here. Opens it up, makes it pretty forgiving. 100% frequency rate of being inside the top 10, 80% frequency rate of producing an optimal lineup guy. Let's see who's in the recent form 2 bucket. There we go. Rory McIlroy, of course. Rory, Xander, Sungjae, Colin. So names I've already kind of crossed out or have spoken poorly about. I do like Rory. I do like Xander. Probably not doing Sungjae. Probably not doing Colin. Don't mind Victor. Probably not doing Cam Young. Probably not doing Tom Kim. Don't mind Hideki. And I'm not going to talk about the rest of the guys, but I also don't mind like Adam Scott or Fowler. 1 to 4. So this has a pretty high chance of producing, you know, a lot of golfers being inside the top 10. So far, it's the highest projection I've seen so far, 4, for the max projection, which might help you out. Maybe it won't. Again, it's 1 to 4. And it could literally be the 4 guys at the top, and you probably can only roster 2 or 3 of them. So keep that all in mind as well. Moving to the next one, recent form 3s. We want somewhere between 1 to 3, and when I take a look at the conservative number, it's still 3. And this starts with Patrick Cantlay, Will Zalatoris, Jordan Spieth, Matt Fitzpatrick. So I'm already becoming biased when I'm thinking about my lineups. I've already decided it's Rory and Finau, or it's Rory and Homa, or it's JT and whatever. And then to fill in that 8K golfer, it just feels like it's Matt Fitzpatrick. If all things work out for me, perfect. But this is where you get in trouble. I already know I'm getting myself into trouble because I'm narrowing down what I'm looking at, and I know I need to keep it open. But I do like the idea of putting Matt Fitzpatrick with like a Rory or a JT start and adding in Homa or Finau. Like it's working out that way pretty well. But the rest of these guys aren't terrible. Remember, this is a projection of 1 to 3. So it could be any of these 7K guys. I already said I like Brendan Steele, Kurt Kitayama. I also don't mind some of these guys on here. I like Alex Smalley. So Could work out, maybe it won't. We'll see. Going to the next one, course or recent form 4s, 0 to 1, but again, we bumped that up to 2, and even the conservative projections saying bump it up to 2. So 0 to 2, recent form 4s. Doesn't really start with anyone. Cam Davis is the most expensive guy in this bucket. Obviously him, Rogers, and Woodland are. I'm not really going to talk about any of these guys because the projection 0 to 2, there isn't really an anchorable golfer I want to build around here. They're just going to fill in, basically. So we can skip this one. Recent form 5s, 0 to 2 here as well. Not a high frequency rate of being inside the top 10 or the optimal lineup, so I'm sure we'll skip right past this one as well. Shane Lowry, Tommy Fleetwood, Alex Noren, Harris English. Yeah, we can skip past this one. There are like Lowry and Fleetwood. They're in my top 40. If we want to include top 50, Noren is here as well. 0 to 2. And I think it's 0 to 2 for a reason. Not really high name guys here. Just obviously a good way to think of this is don't select more than 2 golfers from this bucket. That's probably the best thing I can say to you. Best advice I can give to you. If you want to select 1 or 2, that's fine. Just don't do more than 2. And then recent form 6s, guys who haven't played in the last 6 weeks. So since the tournament champions, we only have 4 in that bucket, where we normally see 22. Is that true? That can't be true. That seems way off. It doesn't really matter because the success rate isn't high, nor is the frequency rate. I wonder, have I cleaned up the bottom of these? I must have, yeah. Really? Recent form? That can't be true. It can't be. Let me double check something really quick. So recent form totals. Yeah. Where is that pulling from? Oh, whoa. 72 in 2013. I bet you that's not true. Can't be. Yeah, it isn't. Okay, cool. So weird. I don't understand how that was like that. 2017. I'm gonna have to do some updates here. Oh, that's not true either. Weird. And 2020. These all seem like the oddest ones. 2020 is F. Yep, okay. Perfect. Been updated. How about 2018? Do we think a 17 is actually true there? That's an F. Yeah, it actually is true. Double check. Yeah. Yep. Okay, cool. Crazy. Sorry about that. Good to go over these things sometimes. All right, so 10.2, that seems more reasonable. That doesn't really change any of the projections from any of these other buckets. We're still 0 to 2, and I don't even think it's worth looking at, but sure. Tiger's in this bucket, and then a couple Europeans, and I think this guy here won. I don't remember what the award is, but usually a winner of some award usually gets to play in this tournament. I forget what it's called. But it could be the Charlie Sifford Award, which I'd feel bad if it is. I just don't remember off the top of my head. So that person gets invited here, and I'm sure it's this guy, or maybe it's this one. Either way, haven't played here or haven't played a PGA Tour event in the last 6 weeks, last 7 weeks, they're in this bucket. So 0 to 2, but really 0 to 1, but really 0. Like as much as Tiger's in here, I'm not gonna waste my money playing Tiger. I'll just be a fan. Hopefully he plays well. But I can't put any investment in him, and that's fine. I'm cool with that. So those are your main 4 buckets. Just to briefly go over salaries. I'm not going to go into each golfer. We'll just talk about these briefly. I am projecting somewhere between 1 to 2 10K golfers being inside the top 10. which really means 0 to 2. Remember, we want that 2-point buffer. And it doesn't change when we include the sweet spot scores into it. 40% frequency rate of being in the optimal lineup. That's not great. But every single year, we see at least 2 inside the top 10. Play a 10K golfer with confidence. 1 to 2, I mean, 2 every single year. I mean, we see an average of 5 in each year's contests, except for this year, we see 4. I bet you this drops down to 1, but don't be surprised if we see 2 10K golfers inside the top 10. When it comes to 9Ks, 0 to 2 is also the projection, and 100% frequency rate of having at least 1 inside the top 10, 80% frequency rate of having at least one in the optimal lineup. So keep that in mind. And we did talk about a lot of 9K golfers in the optimals, as well as the sweet spot optimals or the realistic optimals. Keep that in mind. And 0 to 2, 8K golfers as well, 80% frequency rate. So not 100% like the last 2 ones we talked about. But an 80% frequency rate of producing at least 1 optimal lineup golfer. So also play your 8Ks with a little confidence this week. Again, 0 to 2 for all of these, which is really interesting. Normally, 10Ks we see it be like 1 to 3. It's usually like a really, really high success rate, and it's crazy that it's not a higher projection. Just knowing the success rate as well as the frequency, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm guessing it's because the optimal lineup isn't super great. Anyways, 1 to 3 7K golfers. 2 have been in the optimal lineup every single year. 2 have been inside the top 10 every single year, so keep that in mind. High 6Ks is a 6,500 and up. 80% frequency rate of producing at least 1 top 10 golfer. 60% in optimals. Not super great, but not terrible. Not as bad as the low 6K range, so maybe stay away from the low 6K range. 0 to 1, but of course we bumped that up 0 to 2. Low success rate. Not a great frequency rate of producing top 10s, and not a great frequency rate of being the optimal lineup. So play that range with caution. Now we go into the strokes gained buckets, which if you don't know how I do this, I highly encourage you to watch the strokes gained or the bucket system video that I have. Again, there's a link to that video in the description of this video. Check it out. It'll explain about your strokes gained, but I normally just look at off the tee and putting stats. Basically, your top 3 buckets have positive off the tee, and your bottom 3 either have no strokes gained or negative off the tee. And then I sprinkle in positive and negative putting, not interchangeably, but like, forget what it's called. It rotates. So strokes gained 2 has positive putting, strokes gained 3 has negative putting, strokes gained 4 has positive putting, strokes gained 5 has negative putting, to go along with your off the tee stats. So strokes gained 1 is all stats positive, strokes gained 6 are no strokes gained stats. Now that we got that covered, let's look at our projections. We have 28 golfers that are considered a strokes gained 1 golfer in the tournament this week. That means a projection of at least 2 to 5. I mean, being inside the top 10. So I think it's easy to grab golfers from here. Maybe it's difficult with that many golfers. I don't know. But we want somewhere between 2 to 5. We see at least 1 every single year inside the top 10, but not 1 every single year in the optimal lineup. We have a 75% frequency rate of producing 1 in the optimal lineup. But again, we usually see 16 every single year. Got a few more this year, which I think is pretty interesting. I don't know if this has to do with me. I think maybe I start recording my own stats. They're not like my own stats, they're from Data Golf, but I started recording those like 2 years ago. So maybe this is the first full year that I have at least 1 full year's worth of basically my own data. It's like having 12 more is pretty ridiculous, but it is a pretty strong strength of field. And our best golfers are probably playing their best golf right now. I mean, it's been dominated by the best golfers. Rahm, Scheffler, they're all playing really well. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. Either way, 2 to 5. Follow along with me. Just make sure you have everything selected for all the other buckets. Clear out the strokes gained bucket and go to 1. Remember, projections are what I project to be inside the top 10 or what the bucket system projects to be inside the top 10. Not necessarily how many golfers you should pick, although that's kind of what I use in selecting golfers is the projections. 2 to 5. You have all 4 10K golfers up here. Most of your 9K golfers, if not all of them, I think this is most. A ton of 8K golfers and some fill-ins down here. Again, I like Rory, I like JT, I like Homa, I like Finau. I don't mind Xander. I'm probably mixing in, these guys pretty interchangeably, pretty easily. I'm really starting to fall in love with Rory McIlroy. The more and more I look at this, the more and more I look at all the buckets, I'm really liking Rory. I like that build. I also do like JT. So I don't know where I'm going to go with this. Rahm's a top price guy. He's also number 1 in my ranking so far. So we'll see what the marquee tee times show us tomorrow. I'll be really intrigued to see which guys I can pair up. 2 to 5. And then basically everything else is going to be 0 to 2 because of how high this projection is. So we can just motor through the next couple strokes gained. Nothing is at least 1. So 0 to 2 from these golfers. Don't mind Hovland. Don't mind Scott. I love Power. I shouldn't say I love Power, but I like his price tag. I want to like Taylor Montgomery here, but he's in a couple of buckets that I don't care to play him in. And he did not play well at the Waste Management or the WM Phoenix Open. So probably staying away from that. And I'll let the optimizer do whatever it's going to do. Or the optimizer. I'll let it do its thing for this bucket. I have no leans one way or the other. Remember 0 to 2 for this bucket as well. Morikawa's in it. He's always in this bucket, by the way. Strokes gained 3 is positive off the tee, negative putting. He's always in this bucket. Usually we see Spieth in the strokes gained 4 bucket, but he's hitting the ball a little bit better off the tee. I think it has a lot to do with distance. 0 to 2. I don't have any confidence in any of these guys. I would love to say I do in Colin Morikawa, but I'm certainly not thinking of anchoring around him at all. Same kind of goes with Cameron Young. So do with that as you will. Again, pick your poison. Going to strokes gained 4, 0 to 2 here as well. Ricky Fowler's here. And some interesting names. Nick Taylor, 2nd place finish last week. I don't really care. 0 to 2 is a great projection for this bucket. I'm not trying to force anyone in from this one. Strokes gained 5 is the next one. Tiger is the highest priced guy in this bucket over Tom Hoge, which I think is kind of interesting, but whatever. Really not trying to focus on anyone here. Hoge is definitely the highest ranked guy, but again, I'm not forcing anyone in my lineups from here. And I think we just have one strokes gained 6 golfer, that Marcus Bird. Yeah. So probably when it comes to strokes gained stats or the strokes gained buckets, it's easy to select guys from the strokes gained 1 buckets, but outside of that, probably just ignore or just let the whatever optimizer you use select golfers from those buckets. But that concludes the bucket system, and that also concludes this video. So again, just a reminder, tomorrow I'm planning on going live early as long as the tee times come out at a decent time. I will go early with my live video. So I like to go over the marquee tee times. I like to go over the sweet spot ranks. I also like to go over the anchor buckets, kind of to build our lineups around, like which golfers to build our lineups around. And then I start building lineups for you, for me, just giving ideas out there for everyone. And if you have any questions for me, it's a great time to come in and ask me those questions. So again, normally I go live at 8, but if you want a notification sent to you, just hit the little bell icon that's down below on the YouTube interface. That allows you to know when I go live or when I post new videos. Be subscribed and just check YouTube here and there, because I will put kind of like I'll put a broadcast out there, like a placeholder, and you'll get notified when I do that, when I'm going to go live. So that's available to you. And especially if you're paying attention to YouTube, I'll try to get it out there by 3 p.m. Central Standard Time when I'll actually go live. So I'll give you like a 2 to 3 hour heads up. So look for that. Keep an eye out for that. Just a reminder, giveaways, I like to reward those that participate on the channel. And if you want participation points, all you got to do is be subscribed to this channel and comment down below on any of my videos. And you will get quote unquote participation points. You get a free entry per video you comment on. So it just increases your chances of winning. Monthly giveaway that is ran at the end of the month, but this also includes the weekly giveaway. So you can replace that $50 with $5 and replace monthly with weekly, and the same thing applies. So except for the whole goal, we don't necessarily need to reach a goal, or we don't need to reach a goal for me to run the weekly giveaway, but for the monthly giveaway, $50, we need to get to 500 subscribers. So we're 15 away. We're inching up there. We're getting closer. If you're not yet subscribed, highly encourage you to do so, and very appreciative and thankful that you do, if you do. And of course, that will ensure that if you participate on this channel, you'll get free entries to the giveaways that I run. So those are available. Rebate for Prize Picks. There's a link in the description below that'll get you to the sign up page. Sign up using that promo code SweetSpot. Put $20 in your account. I'm gonna give you $20 back. Easy as that. Plus, Prize Picks are gonna match your deposit up to $100. So 20 turns into 40, 100 turns into 200. Either way, you're still getting $20 back from me. Simple as that. And again, I had a cheat sheet available for you. Hopefully you saw that. If not, link in the description below, and I'll have the optimizer ready for tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, I will send it to you. But that is all that I have. So thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.